Hello, my audiophile friend. My name is Pedro Diaz. Welcome to this channel. The following is a conversation I had with my friend and Patreon, Henk Cantry, of Sound Odyssey in Belgium. We covered a few topics, but especially the optical cartridges of DS Audio. We discussed the technology, the sound, and he compares it to his favorite cartridge from Soundsmith, the Hyperion. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you. Hello, Henk and Lucas. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Pedro.
And tell me what's new this week at the Sound Odyssey.
Well, we just got in the new DS audio cartridge from Japan. It's the third generation optical cartridges. And it's supposed to be very good. And I heard the second generation before. They have a whole range of cartridges, starting at like 2,700 euros and all the way up to 50,000 euros. It's always a system. It comes with an equalizer because it's an optical cartridge. It doesn't work with a regular phono stage. You need a special equalizer. So I have received the DS003, which is the third generation, and it's the second in line. It's about 5,900 euros for the whole package, the equalizer and the cartridge. And it has all the new technology from their flagship Grandmaster W cartridge. And but at a much more economical price, which is relative because it's not that cheap. But
yeah. In terms of audiophile, through the roof prices,
yeah,
proportionally per capita.
Now, the main advantage of this optical cartridge is that the moving mass is very low, extremely low. It's actually a mirror that is moving with a traditional cantilever and a stylus, but there is no coils or magnets moving.
So let me interrupt you. I'm sorry. So this is not. There is no digital. There's no analog to digital conversion. It's all in the analog domain.
It's a complete analog system. Yeah.
Wow.
There is actually there is a little mirror that is modulating the light according to the groove tracing, and that is converted to a normal by the equalizer to a normal line level analog signal. There is no digital processing whatsoever going on. It's a pure analog circuit. So that's good because the confusion is easily made. It's optical, so people think it's like a laser or a compact disc like technology, but it's not.
Or maybe like the final. Remember that turntable, the final.
Yeah.
Finial, but it changed names. Now it's owned by the patent is owned by a Japanese company, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the name now. But that one does convert to digital.
Yeah, that's actually laser tracing the groove. It's different because in with this cartridge is still a normal needle in the groove, so there is no optical tracing of the groove. It's just that the movement of the cantilever is traced optically, but not the groove directly. So that's, but it's a technology that I think, I'm not sure about it, but I think it was Toshiba who made the first one in the 70s. But of course, they couldn't miniaturize the technology at that time. It was like a big, bulky cartridge. But the principle of avoiding a high moving mass and resulting in a better tracing of the grooves. That was the goal of the technology, and it kind of worked. It's supposed to be sounding very good, the old Toshiba cartridge, and the guy from DS Audio, he heard it when he was young, and that inspired him to, when he had the possibilities to develop such a cartridge with modern technology. I think he inherited some know-how from his father's company that did optical mouse manufacturing, so that it's related.
Interesting.
But in that time, there didn't exist LED light, so the system was getting too hot, and the problems that the suspension melted every time. So now, because of the modern,
you can only play one side of the record, and then you have to change it.
I don't know. But
it was very audiophile, very inconvenient.
Yes, $2,000 plays one side of the record, but it sounds incredible.
Yeah, and it breaks every 5 minutes. But right now, you can say that of the current DS audio line, it's very reliable.
Yes,
it's typical in a Japanese fashion, very well built. Yeah. So it works from the. I installed it. Everything works perfectly directly on a Riga P10, which could be a problem because the way they earth the signal, they don't have a separate earth lead.
I was going to ask about that. Is there a possibility, because there's no coils or anything, is there a possibility that you're still going to get noise or hum or all those undesirable things that you get with phono sometimes?
Yes, but in a different way. It just has to be electrically wired to the cartridge tone arm wire. It should be okay, and the earth should be not interfering with the power supply, because you use normally you have on a moving coil or moving magnet left and right, each two leads, wires. And now you have left right is just one lead, two leads, and then a common ground, and the third one is a voltage for powering the cartridge, because it's a powered cartridge. It needs electricity for the LEDs and all the other electronics inside. So you can blow it up by connecting to a wrong. If you connect it to a normal phono stage, you can damage it. So.
Oh, okay.
So you have to be careful when you do
it. It has its own phono stage.
So the equalizer is the phono stage.
Yeah, it's called an equalizer. It's actually a phono stage, but they call it an equalizer because you don't need to do the RIAA correction. Right. It's much more simpler with this, because it's not velocity based, but it's a different. I don't know the electronic background, but it's supposed to be very simple.
Yeah.
Actually, at Meitner, he created an equalizer for DS Audio as an alternative to their own products, and he did it in one night. So a prototype. He heard the cartridge somewhere, and he was smitten by it. So he requested the cartridge only. He wasn't interested in the electronics. So he designed it, made it. Put something together, and it worked immediately. But okay.
I'm glad to hear that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just. I think I'm done with setting up what a cartridge is. Then maybe we can talk about the sound of it.
That was going to be my next question, but I was going to say also that I'm really glad that they have a model also for $2,000, because when this first came out, it just seemed incredibly unattainable. I thought I'm never going to be able to own anything like this, because it was $50,000, the first one, right?
Yeah,
And now there's a model for 2,000, you said, or something like that, euros?
No, I think it's 2,900, 2,700 euros. You got the E1, but I think that's a model that is outgoing.
Oh, okay.
It's still the older technology. I had that too, so I know the difference between this one and E1. The E1 was spectacular in the sense that when you put your record on, it sounded a bit like playing a CD. It was very totally unnervous. I mean, it's just calm without many artifacts. Everything was controlled. The noise floor was low, although I think that the noise floor is not that low because you still have this pink noise thing going on.
And if there's dirt on the record, it's still going to interpret it, right?
Yeah,
Optically.
yeah, but because the moving mass is so low, even if you have a defect in your groove, it's only a short tick. I mean, there is no reverb of the tick. I mean, because the mass, it stops moving immediately after the tick. But that's with basically every cartridge. Like a good moving coil is quicker, so it doesn't last as long. The pops and clicks aren't that loud with a good moving coil cartridge.
And how is this cartridge different to a strain gauge, for example?
Well, the strain gauge is
like the one Soundsmith has. I know Panasonic also used to make it a long time ago, but Soundsmith is the one that produces it now. As far as I know, it's the only one, right?
Yeah, it's not an optical cartridge, a strain gauge. No. It just measures the movement, so there is no moving mass except for the suspension of the cantilever. Right. In this case, there is a mirror that's modulating light, and the light is modulating electricity then, so an electric signal. But I don't know the details. I've seen Peter Lederman's explanation, but I forgot about it. It's confusing because they have the blue LEDs both on the cartridge.
I listened to it once. It sounded amazing.
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard it. I did hear it in Munich on the high-end audio show, but I didn't know the system. It sounded fantastic, actually, over there. Everything he played. All the other cartridges sounded very good as well. So, yeah, it's a different technology. But it's very popular on YouTube. You see many reviewers raving about it. It's apparently making every other cartridge technology obsolete. That's what you hear. There is no reason to build an MC anymore with this technology because it's never going to perform as good as this optical system, which is a bit of an exaggeration, I think. It's not my experience. It's a very good system, and it does very nice things with music. It plays clean, and the surface noise seems to be lower in general. So that's all good, but the sound stage is not as wide or as holographic as with some other cartridges. When you look at the channel separation, it's all like this cartridge is 27 dB, which is a bit mediocre, if you ask me, compared to like 30 dB or 35 dB or 40 dB on some cartridges. And you notice that in the sound stage, it sounds a little bit smaller, in my experience. But what you get in
Timing.
Timing and transient response is really good, of course.
I bet it's like kind of like digital that way. Like there's no delay and there's
so
the
that's
headroom is fantastic.
Yeah, and it stays. The tracking is very good because the low moving mass, I guess. But they learned something from the top moving coil or moving iron cartridges, in the sense that the suspension of the cantilever is also very important and all those things. It's not just the optical system that has its advantages. There was still some progress to be made with the whole suspension of the cantilever and the stylus. And the third generation has a higher voltage output, but that's something that we don't notice because it's handled by the equalizer. You never connect it directly to an amplifier. So, and that has a better signal to noise ratio as a result. But that's all the technical aspects. Well, we have a setup here. On one turntable, I have a Hyperion from Soundsmith, which is, of course, very expensive moving classical music, moving iron technology from Soundsmith, and we compare it to the DS audio, and they're both very good, but it's not a replacement for what the Hyperion does. I mean, with this, the channel separation of the Hyperion in reality is over 40 dB. You get this immense three-dimensional sound stage, and then it gets a lot smaller when you switch to the DS. You have to recalibrate your listening expectations. But when you start with the DS audio without comparing it, it's good, very good on its own, and it will impress many people with all its virtues of low noise and almost digital-like playback, but without the digital flatness or harshness or whatever digital is associated with. It's not always the case, but well, it's definitely better than the previous generation, because I was always bothered a little bit by the high noise level, the pink noise. It was no hum, there is no hum. The classical hum problem is much more disturbing than a bit of pink noise, which is like wind in the woods. It could be an addition to the music.
Well, I mean, I guess every cartridge that uses a coil will contribute somehow to the sound of the record. So if there is no coil and it's just a mirror, then it must be the equalizer that sort of makes the sound signature of the cartridge, right? Or is it completely, there's no such thing as a complete transparent component. There has to be something in addition to the but the smaller soundstage. Is there a difference in tonality, or is there, I mean, if you compare one record to the Hyperion, for example, are you able to identify a sonic signature on the DS in terms of the tone, the timbre?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. But right now, I have to come back later on this because I'm only testing it on two different turntables right now. So the Riga P10, it's a very good turntable, but it's much different from the Technics SP10 with the Frank Schroeder tone arm. So the whole tone arm is also influencing the timbre and the color and all other aspects of music. So, but initial impression is that the Hyperion, which is of course the most expensive cartridge from Soundsmith, apart from the strain gauge. So it's better. The Soundsmith is, the timbre, the color, the dynamics are different as well. The detail, the resolution is a lot higher with the Hyperion in general, but it's picking up a much more surface noise because of the stylus profile of the Hyperion is very resolving, very, but it's a bit suspect to surface noise. If your records are not that great, you'll hear it easier, quicker than you do with the DS audio, DS003. So
it's sounding a little bit softer on the DS, so it's more forgiving for a record that is not optimal. But we miss the transparency that the Soundsmith is giving. Okay, on the perfect system, so it's not very fair to compare it.
But now it looks like DS audio is very inferior to an older technology. So it's the contrary that you hear on other YouTube channels. But it's very clear to hear it over here that it's not blowing away something like a Soundsmith. But Soundsmith is not your average moving coil cartridge. It's a totally different technology. It's from B&O, and it has been developed further and further. And the moving mass is probably as low on a Soundsmith than it is on a DS audio, because the weight of
moving iron always has that advantage. I mean, the moving iron cartridges that I have, which are not that sophisticated, they always do better dynamics. I mean, you play the 1812 cannons from Telarc, and they always do better than any moving coil. By the way, speaking of that, how would that cartridge handle something like that, like the 1812 cannons? Have you tried the DS audio cartridge? Since there's no mass,
not yet,
or very low mass.
Not yet. We had some records playing here, but it was a different one also with cannons. But that was
anything with big bass drums, you know, like a Holt's Military March or something like that, or Carmen Suite or Firebird Suite.
I have a bass torture test from the Shore, one of the vintage Shore test records.
Okay.
So, and I haven't actually tried it on the DS audio. I did it on the Hyperion, and it doesn't distort even at the highest level. So, good suggestion to try out.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if it would jump, you know, what the tracking would be in that situation, or how it would respond. Because if it's optical, there's not going to be any delay.
Yeah, but that also depends on the tone arm and the tracking force that you apply and all that. So.
That was going to be my next question, because it must be super high compliance.
No, it's not so high compliance. It's you need a medium mass tone arm at least for it.
Okay, so like my SME5 should be okay with it?
Perfect. Every low compliance tone arm or a tone arm for low compliance cartridges will work with the DS audio. I wouldn't try it on the older SME lightweight tone arms. It will jump. It's a big cartridge as well, so it's not that small.
But on the first test we did with my SME 3012, the 12-inch, didn't work. We had an earth problem.
Yeah, but that was a cable problem.
A cable problem. Yeah. So you have to be careful to find the right matching with the older arms. So I'm not sure that it's working very well.
But you're talking about the electrical connection.
Yeah, that's something else.
Yeah.
That's another good question. Do you just use the same cables for that cartridge?
Yes.
On your tone arm? Same white, red, blue, and green? No different. There's no modifications that had to be made?
No, you just plug it in. So it's the same connection. It's only
But so the conversion, it's done on the cartridge then?
Yeah,
the
well,
optical to the electrical signal.
Yeah, it's in the cartridge,
Okay.
but the wires are fed differently. So it's still the same four colors, but the meaning has changed. I mean, yeah, they have
It's
to
not like
feed.
it's not like a balanced circuit or anything like that.
No, because for each channel you have one live wire, and then you have a common ground, and the common ground is for the audio signal that's coming out, or the light signal, I should say, the electrical signal, and the other wire is the voltage, probably 5 voltage or something like that, that feeds the cartridge and is also connected to the common ground for the power supply. So, but all these things are handled by the equalizer. You don't have to wire something differently. It's just like a normal phono stage in between your amplifier and the cartridge. That's how you set it up.
And but the no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the equalizer has some different settings for filtering low frequencies, like rumble filters. Apparently, because the technology would pick up even the lowest frequencies very forcefully, you need that. So there is a roll-off built in, and you can choose between several settings of roll-off.
Like gain, probably you can probably change the gain on it.
No, the gain you can't change, but the roll-off of the low frequencies, like the rumble, like a rumble filter. It has a rumble filter with different settings that you can choose from.
And there's no way to equalize the tone or anything like that. There's no
no
controls or
no mono button, nothing.
Are they gonna come with a? It would be sort of anachronistic to make a mono version, right?
Yeah, a Star Trek mono cartridge.
with a 0.1 spherical diamond.
Yeah.
To play the very old records. That would be kind of cool. Or 78. Can you imagine?
Yeah, maybe.
I'm sure they can.
Yeah, why not? It should be possible. I've seen expensive moving coils in mono, so why not?
But those are mostly made to play modern mono records. You know, the Blue Notes and the all those Impex. They can be played on a small grooves, you know, small diamond. What was gonna say? I forgot. So you can use a medium mass arm, and now the price you said is around between 5,000 and 6,000 euros.
Yeah, it's 5,900 euros for this specific combination.
And there's only one kind of equalizer that comes for it. They don't allow you to upgrade to another equalizer or.
Yeah, you can do that.
Oh, you can?
You can buy the cartridge separately and choose another equalizer. All equalizers are compatible with all cartridges, so you can mix and match however you like. So,
do you only have one equalizer there, the one that came with the cartridge?
Right now, I have, yeah. But I had access to different equalizers, 2 different equalizers. Actually, for the previous generation from this one, I heard 2. So my experience is that it doesn't influence the sound as much as you would think. Not as much as I'm used to with moving coil or standard phono stages. Because earlier on you made a remark that the sound, the only way to change the sound is by augmenting or improving on the equalizer. In practice, it doesn't change that much with better electronics. Of course, it gets better,
because it has a power supply, it has some capacitors, resistors.
Yeah, but for instance, the channel separation is not determined by the limits of the equalizer. It's the cartridge that is limiting it. So you won't solve that by better electronics. I think when you go higher in the range, it gets a lot better, the channel separation. But I don't think, well, at least on paper, it doesn't have the, like the immense channel separation you get from the Soundsmith cartridges, which is not a number that just a specification. You hear it immediately in the soundstage, so it translates to a different listening experience.
I bet.
Yeah, and the dynamics are from both cartridges are very good. I mean, the bass response on the DS audio is very good. I think that's the only thing that right now is better than the Soundsmith Hyperion. I would say is the deep bass response.
So it's a cartridge for bass heads.
Well,
you can play Beyonce and you can play Dua Lipa on it.
Yeah, hip hop music. It's just made for that.
You can play hip hop music on your expensive turntable. Yes.
Erykah Badu. That's also. He also uses deep bass.
Now it would be unfair also to compare it to the Hyperion because this is like in the clear audio Goldfinger range, right?
Yeah, it's 7,500 euros without phono stage, so it's not a fair comparison.
It's Koetsu range, but what? So in the $6,000 range or euro, what cartridges would you sort of place there to be semi-competitive if you just don't want to deal with that you have there, or that maybe like a Rega cartridge or?
Well, then you need to have a good phono stage first. So you have to put that in the price. So let's say that you pay 1,500 euros for a phono stage. Maybe the i-Fi. You reviewed the i-Fi Zen phono stage as well, no? I haven't.
That's a great. Yeah, that is a great phono stage, especially if you just don't need change the values too much.
Yeah.
But there's also the iPhone or the what's it called? Their names. They keep changing their names.
The bigger one.
i5 Phono 3. The new one, the Phono 3.
Yeah, there's a black label.
The black label.
Yeah. That's a great, phono stage. My only complaint is that it's kind of fiddly, little tiny buttons, and also the format is weird. Cables in the front and the back. But yeah, it's a great.
So, and I have the Legion Clue, which is a phono stage about 1,800 euros. The Entity, very limited settings. No, we cannot switch gain. So
right.
So it's for like say a 0.4 millivolt output, and the load is between 90 ohms and 180 ohms. So it's not that wide range. I cannot use it for a Soundsmith cartridge because you need at least 470 ohms load.
Okay.
So, but to answer your question, I would choose something like a Legion Clue because it sounds very good. That phono stage, the Entity is really very resolving, and it's and when you go a step below that, then the Zen phono stage is perfectly fine, especially with a good power supply. Yeah. But in between there, I wouldn't choose too many other things because you don't hear too much of a difference.
Nothing like a HANA Umami or the Audio-Technica, what is it, the 1000 or something like that, the very expensive Audio-Technica. I bet that's a good cartridge.
You mean the one with the coils on the on the stylus itself?
Yeah.
Well, I heard that cartridge. I like Audio Technica. They make great cartridges, like the 8033 range and the Arts range. But the R1000 is, I don't know if you heard it. It's very high performance, but it's really analytical sounding.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the richest sound that you would expect from that cartridge. You need to match it very carefully with all your other components. It's not an easy cartridge to make it sound stellar, but it can sound stellar.
Right. So if people are in the area, Brussels, Ghent, Antwerp, can they come hear these cartridges at Sound Odyssey?
Well, not all of them. I have some EMT cartridges that I demonstrate. They're also very good. And then the Hyperion I have, and we had a voice cartridge from Soundsmith, which is a high output design. Their best high output cartridge, which is also very good. And then I have Riga, Afeta, moving coil cartridge. I have 4 EMT cartridges over here. So you can listen to them and hear the comparison. And we have a lot of experience with other cartridges like Orthophones and Audio Technica. So if somebody says, I would expect the sound would be more like this, then we can steer it in a certain direction, because cartridges, they really flavor somehow the sound. It's easy to change your system at the source with a cartridge. Mm-hmm. I find it in digital systems very difficult to achieve that same range of adjusting the tone or the sound of your system. That's what. It's a lot of fun, cartridges. I mean, it's an addiction. Once you start with it, you always want another cartridge.
I have too many, but it's because in the analog domain you can change the tone, you can equalize. Those are tone controls. In digital, I think what you gain, of course, you get better tone with better equipment, but it's not as noticeable. Like you said, it's like the equalizer. What you get is just more definition. It's like a better screen. It's like a better TV screen where you see, clearer image, but not necessarily change the colors of the image as much.
Yeah, and today, even with very affordable DACs, they don't sound that bad in comparison with the top segment of DACs. I mean, the difference is not so amazing. Like with like if you say a Crosley turntable, if you compare it to high-end Hyperion with Frank Schroeder arm and Technics SP10, it's a whole other world.
Of course.
But if you have a DAC from your phone and you listen to it, and then you listen to a very high-end DAC, it's of course better, but it's not like you're listening from a 78 record to a very high resolution system. The difference is not that big to my ears.
Maybe it's because it's all digital.
Yeah, and the state of the art has been like digital to analog conversion. The state of the art is, I won't say there is a ceiling, but I don't see that much improvement anymore. It's more in the recording side or in the mastering of the digital domain that things go wrong, in my experience. I mean, the reason why modern music doesn't sound good is not because of the digital interface, because there are phono stages that digitize the music immediately, like the new Technics integrated amp or Devialet, the French
PS Audio.
PS Audio, and it will capture, to my ears, most of the nuances of the cartridges. So it's the whole streaming thing, and the way they master it, or whatever they do with it, they compress it somehow, or they treat it differently than they do when they master a record, because of physical limitations usually. But the end result is that the sound of vinyl, even if it's from a digital source, is usually better than the one you get on a pure digital carrier or streaming.
I agree. Yeah.
And I don't know why exactly, but the process of tracing a groove with a needle and then listening to it improves the sound somehow, which is, of course, any scientist will say that is not a good thing. And it's probably not because of the right reasons it sounds better, but it does to most people's ears.
Well, I guess it's also like to think that the analog is like wine. There's no limit to how good it can be. And digital is like beer. It's very... Oh, wait, I'm insulting the Belgians here. It's a beer is great, and you can have great beer, and it can get better. But can it ever be as good as like really good Chateau Margaux 1982? I mean... you can have beer that's not expensive. That's really, really good. Like you were talking about the converters, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, you can have beer at 5 times the price. That it's a little bit better, but maybe it's not. That it still tastes similar. You just, I don't know.
Yeah, there's something quite some truth in the comparison, I think, because
it's just a different kind of taste. Digital is digital no matter what. If it's great or not, it just tastes like digital. And analog is just more a bigger palette.
Yeah, that is. It's the colors you can get. It's like photography, maybe like you do a more analog look, or in photography, or just harsh, bright lights and very like TVs. You have these LEDs, the QLED TVs, LED TVs with bright screens. I mean, that's, to me, it sounds like some digital. It looks like some digital files would sound like. I mean, overly bright but flat. There is no dynamic because everything is overlit somehow, and all these shades of resolution and detail, and you hear a lot of like the tone of instruments and voices. I mean, with analog, a voice can be very convincing, and that's always a good test because we're used to listening to voices, and we recognize a real voice quite easily. So when it's well recorded and you play it on an analog system, it sounds more convincing. It's more real. You need to have a certain level of quality in the. If you have a bad record player, it will color the sound with all the parasite vibrations and whatever. Then it's not that experience. Then it's more like it's very cozy with the crackles and the noisy sound, but that's a different kind of that's more cultural determined.
Right.
Yeah, bias towards analog because it's a nostalgic thing. But in absolute terms, there are so many records available. It's the best analog medium you can buy. There are tapes, of course, but how many tapes can you get, and how many tapes are good? So I have an Oppo Reel system, but I never use it because.
Yeah, what are you going to use it for? You're not going to record an LP because it's not going to sound as good as the LP, and you're not going to record a CD or something digital because it's still going to. Yeah, no, it's not. There's no use for it unless you are an engineer and you record stuff and you want to, play it back or something like that. Or do your own recordings at home.
Or you
guys have concerts. You guys have live concerts sometimes at Sound Odyssey, right?
Well, we're going to have that. We still need to do that, but okay. Yeah.
So if you do that, then you'll be able to play them back for the customers when they come, listen to stuff. You say, "Oh, we had a concert here, and this is what we recorded." That would make sense. But otherwise, there's no reason to. It's like cassette. Also, you have a cassette deck because you have old cassettes that you have stored somewhere. You want to play them.
Yeah.
Why else would you want to?
Well, if you got a
toy to play with.
If you got a master tape or a copy of a master tape, then it makes sense. But
yes,
that's not going to happen as a mass product anytime soon, I think. Yeah. And then we're talking about the expense of new open reel recorders. They're even more expensive than vinyl playback.
That sounds like a topic for our next talk. So let's wrap it up.
Okay.
Thank you, Hank and Lucas of
Sound
Odyssey.
Our pleasure.
And I think I understand a little bit better this DS audio technique.
Okay.
Of making cartridges. Very interesting. Maybe someday I'll get to try them.
Yeah. We can arrange that. When you come over here, you can listen to it.
I'd love to. Let's see if my trip to Paris materializes it.
Okay. Well.
Anyway, I will talk to you guys next week then.
Okay. Thank you.
Fine.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your day.
You too.
Thank you.